He went on a date, but ended up as the vampire sister's prey. Daniel had never been the type to chase strange invitations, but something about the message he received caught his attention. It was simple, almost too simple. Just a time, a place, and the words, "I want to meet you." No name, no details, no explanation. Most men would have ignored it, but Daniel had spent years in the colonies and had learned that sometimes the strangest calls led to the most unforgettable nights. Still, when he reached the restaurant on the far edge of the city, unease settled into his chest. The place looked expensive, but it was far too quiet for a Friday evening. The streets outside hummed with neon lights and music from other spots. But here, there was silence, like the building itself had been removed from the world around it. The host at the door had pale skin, almost gray in tone, and eyes that seemed to follow Daniel even when he looked away. Daniel brushed off the thought, forcing a smile as he followed the host inside. The dining hall stretched into shadows, the lights dim as if someone had lowered them just for him. Only one table was lit by a single candle, and at that table sat a woman. Her black hair gleamed like polished glass, her skin flawless, and her eyes a strange deep red that reflected the flickering flame. She smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile that pulled him forward against his better judgment. "You came," she said, her voice soft, almost like music played too low for comfort. "Of course," Daniel replied, though in truth he did not know why he had. He had expected an ordinary date, maybe even a prank, but instead he felt as if he had walked into something he could not quite name. The meal arrived quickly, though Daniel barely noticed the food. The staff moved with unnatural silence, their eyes always fixed on him. Every time he glanced up, he caught one of them staring as if waiting for something. His date noticed his unease and leaned closer, her breath cool against his skin. "You do not need to be afraid," she whispered. "I am not afraid," Daniel said, though his voice betrayed him. Her smile widened, showing teeth that seemed a little too sharp. She asked him about his life, about his time in the colonies, and about what he was looking for. Her questions felt less like conversation and more like study, as if she were measuring his worth for something other than love or romance. At one point, Daniel asked her name. She paused for too long before replying. "Call me Celine." It sounded like a name chosen for effect rather than truth. The dinner stretched on, though Daniel could not recall tasting a single bite. His eyes kept drifting toward the far corners of the room, where shadows gathered thicker than they should. He swore he saw movement there, figures just beyond the light, watching. When the meal ended, Celine stood with graceful precision and reached out her hand. Her skin was cold when his fingers touched hers. "My sisters are waiting," she said, her voice calm, but the words sent a chill through his body. Daniel frowned. "Sisters?" "Yes," she answered, her red eyes glinting. "They wanted to meet you too. They are very eager." Something inside him screamed to leave, but her grip tightened on his hand. The staff, still standing in silence, blocked every exit with their gazes alone. He felt like prey cornered by predators. Celine led him out of the restaurant and into a sleek vehicle waiting at the curb. The streets of the colony blurred past as they drove into the darker parts of the city. Daniel tried to ask questions, but Celine's answers were vague, her eyes fixed ahead as if she were following an invisible path. The car slowed in front of a mansion on the edge of the colony, its windows dark, its walls ancient compared to the modern buildings around it. The gate opened without a sound, and the car rolled inside. Daniel's chest tightened with each passing second. When they stepped out, he felt the air shift, colder than before, as though the mansion itself exhaled around him. Celine smiled once more, her red eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Do not worry," she said, her voice now sharper than before. "They have been waiting for you." Daniel froze at the base of the steps, the weight of the night pressing down on him. This was no ordinary date. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and deep inside, he realized the truth he had been trying to ignore since the moment he walked into that silent restaurant. He had not been invited here for romance. He had been lured, And now, whatever waited inside that mansion was already closing in. The doors of the mansion opened without anyone touching them. The heavy wood swung wide as if pushed by unseen hands, and the air that drifted out carried a faint scent of iron and old stone. Daniel hesitated on the steps, but Selene tugged his hand with a strength that felt unnatural for her slender frame. He followed her inside, though every step sent warning signals through his mind. The hall was vast and silent. A red carpet stretched across the marble floor, leading into darkness. Strange portraits lined the walls, paintings of pale figures with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their faces looked too sharp, too cruel, and Daniel felt as though the painted eyes followed him. Selene released his hand once they reached the center of the hall. "They will come soon," she said softly, her voice echoing against the cold stone. "Who exactly are they?" Daniel asked, though part of him already knew. "My sisters," she replied with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "We do everything together." Her words chilled him. The way she said everything made it sound less like family and more like a pact, something bound by blood. A door at the end of the hall creaked open. 3 figures stepped out, one by one, their movements smooth, as if gliding instead of walking. Their pale faces emerged from the shadows, each woman as beautiful as Selene but with subtle differences. One had hair as white as snow, falling in silken strands down her shoulders. Another had golden hair that shone like the faint glow of the moon. The last had hair as dark as night, even darker than Selene's, framing her crimson eyes. They circled Daniel slowly, their footsteps silent on the marble floor. He turned to keep each one in sight, but they moved too smoothly, too quickly, slipping behind him and then reappearing at his side. It was like being trapped in the middle of a dance where he was not the partner but the prey. The white-haired sister leaned close, her lips almost brushing his ear. "So this is the one you brought us?" "Yes," Selene said proudly, though her voice held a hint of something Daniel could not read. The golden-haired sister studied him with sharp eyes. "He is strong," she said, touching his shoulder lightly with fingers colder than ice. "His blood will be rich." Daniel stepped back, his heart pounding. "What is this? What do you want from me?" The dark-haired sister's lips curled into a smile, revealing teeth far too sharp to be human. "What do you think we want?" They laughed softly, the sound sending a shiver down his spine. It was not a laugh of joy but of hunger. The hall seemed to grow smaller, the shadows deeper, as if the house itself was closing in on him. Selene stepped forward and rested her hand on his chest. "Do not be afraid, Daniel. This is not about pain. It is about survival. Ours." Daniel tried to pull back, but her grip pressed against his chest with unnatural force, keeping him still. The sisters moved closer, their glowing red eyes fixed on him. The golden-haired one tilted her head. "You feel it, do you not? The fear? The racing of your heart? That is what we love the most." The white-haired sister whispered, "And soon, it will belong to us." Daniel's instincts screamed at him. He had been through dangerous missions before, had faced alien soldiers and strange beasts in the wilds of unexplored planets, but nothing had ever filled him with the kind of dread he felt now. These women were not just predators. They were something far older, something that fed on more than flesh. He forced himself to think clearly. Panic would only make him weaker, and weakness would make him easier to break. He glanced around the hall, searching for exits, but every door seemed too far, too guarded by shadows. The sisters circled him, once more their movements timed, precise, almost ritualistic. He realized then that this was not random. They were preparing something. The white-haired one leaned close again, her voice like silk and venom. "Do you know what happens when we drink from a human under the blood moon?" Daniel shook his head, his throat dry. "We become more than strong," she whispered. "We become eternal." The golden-haired sister added, "And tonight, the blood moon rises." Selene's hand tightened against his chest as her eyes locked on his. For the first time, Daniel saw something flicker in her expression, hesitation, maybe even conflict, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. The dark-haired sister leaned forward, her lips curling into a grin that showed the sharpness of her teeth. "You will not leave alive." The words echoed in his skull like a sentence passed down by a judge. He felt the air grow colder, the shadows stretch longer, and the mansion itself seemed to lean closer, hungry to witness what was about to happen. Daniel clenched his fists. He was not going to die here. Not like this. But as the sisters closed in, their red eyes glowing brighter, he knew the real nightmare was only just beginning. Daniel stood in the center of the hall, his heart pounding so loudly he feared the sisters could hear it. Their eyes glowed like burning coals in the dim light, their pale faces circling him in silence. Every instinct told him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The heavy doors behind him had shut tight, and the windows were covered with thick curtains that let no light escape. He was trapped, and they knew it. But Daniel was not an ordinary man. Before this strange date, before this colony life, he had been a soldier in the Galactic Guard. He had faced alien ambushes, deadly storms, and missions where death followed every step. Fear had never saved him then, and it would not save him now. His training whispered inside him, "Stay calm. Think. Survive." The golden-haired sister moved first, gliding closer with a cruel smile. Her hand reached for his neck, fingers like claws waiting to strike. Daniel reacted without thought. He twisted to the side, grabbed her wrist, and pulled with all his strength. The move shocked her. She had not expected resistance. She stumbled, her eyes flashing with anger. The other sisters hissed, a sound sharp and inhuman, their fangs showing. Celine stepped back, her eyes watching closely. For a brief second, Daniel thought he saw something else in her gaze. Curiosity, maybe even respect. "You think you can fight us?" The dark-haired sister sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. "Humans are weak. You will break before the moon is high." Daniel took a slow breath and reached into his jacket. He carried only a few tools these days, habits left over from his soldier life. His fingers brushed against the small plasma cutter, no bigger than a knife but hot enough to melt through steel. He pulled it free, its blue light cutting through the darkness. The sisters paused, their eyes narrowing at the sudden glow. "This will not end the way you think," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The white-haired sister laughed softly. "Brave, I like that. It makes the blood taste better." She lunged at him faster than his eyes could follow, but Daniel had been waiting. He slashed the plasma cutter across her arm. The blade did not cut her like flesh, it seared, burning through her pale skin with a hiss. She shrieked, the sound piercing, her arm blackened where the blade touched. The other two sisters cried out in fury, their movements suddenly sharp and deadly. They closed in from both sides, their speed unnatural. Daniel ducked low, rolling across the marble floor, and came up near one of the heavy pillars in the hall. He pressed his back against it, breathing hard, his weapon glowing faintly in his hand. The golden-haired sister snarled. "You dare wound us? You're not untouchable," Daniel said, though his chest heaved with each breath. The dark-haired one bared her fangs. "You only make the hunt sweeter." They rushed him together this time, faster than before. Daniel swung the plasma cutter in wide arcs, forcing them back. Sparks hissed in the air every time the blade connected with stone or metal. He managed to catch the edge of the golden-haired sister's dress, burning it to ash, but she slipped away before he could do more. Celine had not moved. She stood near the staircase, her eyes fixed on him, her face unreadable. Daniel shouted toward her, "You don't have to do this. Whatever you are, you don't need me dead." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her silence was almost worse than their hisses. The white-haired sister recovered and stepped forward, clutching her burned arm. Her red eyes burned with hatred. "You will regret that, human." "No one escapes us," Daniel backed up slowly, his mind racing. He could not fight them forever. They were too fast, too strong, and he had only one weapon with limited charge. He needed a plan. Then he noticed something, the portraits on the wall. Each one showed a figure with the same glowing red eyes, the same pale skin. None of the faces looked alive. They were all trapped in paint, frozen forever. The sisters had lived for centuries, maybe longer, feeding on humans like him. Rage replaced his fear. He refused to be another painted ghost in their hall of victims. The golden-haired sister lunged again, but this time Daniel charged forward instead of retreating. He slammed the plasma cutter against her shoulder, the blade sizzling into her flesh. She screamed and fell back, clutching the smoking wound. The dark-haired one howled, rushing at him with claws extended. Daniel braced himself and drove the cutter forward. The blade grazed her side, leaving a black burn, but she struck his arm with inhuman strength, sending the cutter skidding across the floor. Daniel fell to one knee, pain shooting up his arm. His weapon lay meters away, glowing faintly on the marble. The sisters laughed, their voices echoing like cruel bells. "Now you are ours," the white-haired one whispered, blood-red eyes glowing with hunger. Daniel clenched his fists. He was not finished. Not yet. Daniel's arm throbbed with pain as he knelt on the marble floor, his plasma cutter lying too far away to reach. The three sisters loomed above him, their pale faces glowing faintly in the candlelight. Their red eyes gleamed with triumph, and their sharp smiles told him they believed the fight was already over. Celine stood apart, her figure calm against the staircase. Her eyes stayed fixed on Daniel, but she had not moved, not even when her sisters attacked him. Something in her expression was strange, too thoughtful, almost conflicted. The white-haired sister stepped closer, her burned arm twitching with anger. "You cannot win. We have hunted for centuries. You are only one man." Daniel clenched his fists. "Maybe, but I am not finished yet." The golden-haired sister leaned down, her breath cold as frost against his cheek. "Do you know what tonight means, human?" Daniel did not answer. He forced himself to stay calm, even though the pounding in his chest was like a drumbeat of fear. She smiled, her crimson eyes flashing. "The blood moon rises tonight. It comes once every 100 years. Under its light, our strength multiplies. Under its light, no human survives," the dark-haired sister added. "And when we drink, we do not only take your life. We take your spirit. You will become part of us, bound forever." Daniel's skin prickled. He had faced soldiers, assassins, and creatures in the wild, but this was different. This was not just about blood. This was about his very soul. The sisters moved around him in a slow circle, their movements like a ritual. Each step echoed on the marble like a drumbeat for a sacrifice. Daniel realized then that they were not just predators. They were part of something bigger, an ancient covenant tied to the blood moon itself. Celine finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut the silence. "Do not frighten him more than needed." The golden-haired one glanced at her. "Why do you protect him? He is only prey." Celine's eyes flickered, but her tone stayed calm. "Because fear makes the blood bitter. You know this." Daniel watched her closely. Her words might have been for her sisters, but there was something else behind them. She was not like the others, not fully. The white-haired sister raised her hand toward him, her nails glinting like blades. "It is almost time. Let us take him to the chamber." The chamber. The word sent another chill down Daniel's spine. They forced him to his feet, their cold hands gripping his arms with unnatural strength. He struggled, but it was useless against their power. They dragged him down a long hallway, past doors lined with carvings he could not understand. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, alive with energy that made his skin crawl. Finally, they reached a heavy door at the end. The golden-haired sister pushed it open and a rush of cold air spilled out. Daniel was shoved inside, stumbling onto the stone floor. The chamber was vast, shaped like a circle, with a high ceiling that opened to the night sky. Through it, he saw the red glow of the blood moon rising. Its light filled the room, bathing everything in crimson. At the center of the chamber stood a stone altar, old and cracked, its surface stained dark with what Daniel knew was not paint. Around it, dozens of candles burned low, their flames barely alive. The sisters moved to surround the altar, their eyes glowing brighter in the red light. Selena lingered near the edge, her hands clasped in front of her, her face unreadable. Daniel's breath quickened as he realized the truth. This was not just a feeding ground. It was a ritual site. Countless humans had died here, their blood given to the sisters under the blood moon. That was why no one ever returned. That was why his date had always been a trap. The white-haired sister smiled cruelly. "Now you see, tonight your life will bind us. We will drink and we will endure for another century." Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon, no chance to fight them directly. But soldiers were not only trained to fight, they were trained to survive. He needed to find a weakness. His eyes darted around the chamber. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed in time with the moonlight. They were not random carvings, they were channels focusing the moon's power into the altar. If he could break even one, maybe the ritual would collapse, but how? He had no weapon, no tool, nothing but his will. The golden-haired sister pushed him toward the altar, her fingers biting into his shoulder. "Lie down," she ordered, her voice dripping with hunger. Daniel resisted, forcing himself to stand firm. "If you need the blood moon to survive, maybe you are not as strong as you think," the dark-haired one hissed, her eyes blazing. Silence. Celine stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Daniel. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. In hers, he saw something almost human. A spark of doubt, she whispered so softly the others might not hear. "The altar is not unbreakable." Daniel's chest tightened. Was she helping him? Or was this another cruel game? The sisters drew nearer, their fangs glinting in the moonlight. The ritual was about to begin. Daniel looked at the altar, then at the glowing symbols, and knew one thing. If he did not act now, there would be no escape. The blood moon hung high in the sky, pouring its crimson glow through the open ceiling. The light spread across the chamber like liquid fire, painting the stone walls with living shadows. The three vampire sisters stood around the altar, their pale faces glowing brighter than before, their red eyes burning with hunger. Daniel was pressed against the cold stone, his body shaking from pain and exhaustion. The golden-haired sister leaned forward, her lips close to his ear. "Do not fight. It will be easier if you give in." Daniel clenched his jaw. He had never been the type to surrender. Not in battle, not in life, and he would not now. His eyes flicked to the glowing carvings on the walls. If he could break the ritual, maybe, just maybe, he could survive. The white-haired sister raised her burned arm and pressed her cold hand against his chest. "His blood will seal our strength," she whispered. "The moon demands it." The dark-haired one tilted her head back, laughing low. "Then let us begin." They moved closer, their movement slow and deliberate, like a dance rehearsed for centuries. Daniel's heart pounded. He needed a chance, just one opening. Celine stepped forward, her eyes fixed on him. She looked at her sisters, then back at Daniel. For a moment, the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Then she spoke. "Wait." Her sisters froze, their red eyes snapping toward her. "Why?" The dark-haired one hissed. "He is not like the others," Celine said softly. "He fought. He wounded us. He deserves more than to die like prey." The golden-haired one snarled. "You pity him? He is food." "Nothing more," Celine's voice hardened. "No, he is proof that humans are not weak. And maybe—" She hesitated, her gaze holding Daniel's. "Maybe he is more than that." Her sisters hissed in anger, their fangs gleaming in the red light. "Do not betray us, Celine," the white-haired one warned. "The covenant is bound. We cannot stop the ritual." But Daniel saw it now. The conflict in Celine's eyes, the war between loyalty and something deeper. He took his chance. "If you want to live forever," he said, his voice sharp, "then know this. You will never be free. You will always be bound to blood, to the moon, to each other. But He slammed his fist against the altar, the stone cracking faintly. "I choose my own fate." The sisters shrieked in rage. The golden-haired one lunged at him, claws extended. Daniel twisted, grabbing one of the candles and smashing it against the wall. The flame caught the carvings, the glow flickering wildly. The symbols pulsed, breaking their steady rhythm. The chamber shook. The blood moon's light wavered as if the sky itself had been struck. "No," the white-haired sister screamed, rushing forward. Daniel grabbed another candle and hurled it across the wall. Fire spread, licking over the glowing carvings, breaking the flow of energy. The altar trembled beneath him, cracks spreading across its surface. The golden-haired sister slashed his arm, but he pushed through the pain, his hand striking the stone again and again. The altar groaned like a living thing before shattering with a deafening crack. The ritual broke. The chamber erupted in chaos. The moonlight flickered, dimming. The sisters screamed as their power faltered, their red eyes dimming to a faint glow. The walls shook, stones falling from above. Celine moved, placing herself between Daniel and her sisters. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the chamber. Her sisters turned on her, their faces twisted with rage. "You did this!" the dark-haired one hissed. "You betrayed us!" Celine's eyes blazed. "I chose." They lunged at her, but Celine struck back with a strength Daniel had not seen before. She slammed the white-haired sister against the wall, her claws digging deep. The golden-haired one tried to strike, but Daniel, summoning every last drop of strength, tackled her away. They struggled on the floor, his blood mixing with her hiss of fury. Selene finished the fight. She drove her hand through the dark-haired sister's chest, the scream echoing until it was silenced forever. The white-haired one tried to crawl away, but the broken ritual consumed her, her body collapsing into ash. The golden-haired sister, wounded and furious, hissed at Daniel. "You cannot kill us all. We will always return." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Not tonight." He drove the plasma cutter, retrieved in the chaos, through her chest. Her scream tore through the chamber before her body crumbled to dust. Silence fell. The chamber burned with faint embers, the blood moon's glow fading from the ceiling. Only Selene and Daniel remained, both breathing hard, surrounded by ash and ruin. Daniel staggered back, his body weak, his blood dripping onto the stone. Why did you help me?" Selene looked at him, her red eyes softer now. "Because you are not like the others. You are more. And because—" She hesitated, then whispered, "I am tired of being a monster." Daniel did not know if he could trust her. He did not know if this was the end, or just the beginning of another trap. But he saw something in her face that the others never had. Choice. She stepped closer, her cold hand brushing his cheek. "You belong to me now, human." Not as prey, but as something else. Her words sent a chill through him, but also something else. A weight he could not explain. The ruins of the altar smoked around them, the blood moon sinking behind the clouds. Daniel knew his life would never be the same. He had survived the vampire sister's prey ritual, but he had not escaped. For in Selene's eyes he saw a promise and a warning.